Welcome to the Bike Talk with Dave podcast. I'm your host, Dave Mabel, and I really appreciate you tuning in to this week's episode with director of the Mazda Orange Seal off-road racing team, John Harp, or as he's known to his friends, Johnny Gravel. He's got an interesting and long history with the bike, road racing in kind of the post-dawn era of international cycling in the U.S. back in the late 80s. He was discovered to be a potential top U.S. rider by then coach of the nascent U.S. cycling team, Eddie B. His racing was cut short for reasons that I will let him tell, but suffice it to say, he was later drawn back in by the joy found on gravel roads, which led him eventually to form the Mazda Orange Seal off-road racing team. We had a great conversation about the origin of the team and discussed the riders on the team this year. I enjoyed talking with him, and I hope you do too. John Harp. Johnny Gravel Harp. Welcome to the Bike Talk with Dave podcast. I'm excited to have you on, even through these technically challenging times sometimes. Stuff doesn't always behave as it should, but I think we'll get a good recording out of this, and I'm excited to have you on.
Dave, thanks for having me, and two old men trying to figure out a computer, so I guess there should be a glitch or two, shouldn't there?
Should be, absolutely. That's exactly the challenge we're having. You are the director of the Mazda Orange Seal gravel dirt race team. And been through some transition this year, some new riders I'm excited to hear about,
Yep.
and hear about kind of the origin of the team. But before we get there, how about the origin of, I even want to go back pre-Johnny Gravel to your early days racing. But what's your background in bike? Where'd you get your bike chops?
You know, I grew up in the Midwest mostly, and I was about 13 years old, just living west of downtown Chicago, and there was a bike path that we lived close to that was 13 miles to the Brookfield Zoo. And for whatever reason, I just got a bee in my bonnet to try to borrow a bike or something, but I did the thing solo one day when I was 13, and I must have had a runner's high from heaven or something, because I just had to do it again, and I just kept doing it again and again, and then of course you start timing yourself, and then one thing leads to another. You find group rides, and I was baking bread and shoveling snow and mowing lawns, saving up money to buy a race bike, and met a pretty amazing group of athletes that were already there. That the doctor of the Olympic cycling team was actually based in that area, and he saw me on a group ride one day and just asked me if he could test me, and evidently I blew up the test. And a couple nights later, Eddie Borshowitz, the Olympic cycling coach, called me at dinner. My dad was like, "Oh, there's a strange sounding guy on the phone, wants to talk to John." So he was like, "John, you have a big motor. We'd like to have you come to Colorado." And I'm just barely just picking up the fact that I was talking to the man, and he wanted me to come to Colorado for an extended camp. And one thing led to another, and I've signed with a heck of a junior team, started winning some bike races, and spent my summers at the Olympic Training Center, and signed a pro contract when I was 20. That was a team that was based out of Belgium, but it was a Danish team. Long story short, I had a crossroads where I either began a doping program or I quit. So I quit cycling at the age of almost 21 and didn't unpack my bike. I never saw my bike again and didn't ride again. So that was 28 years off the bike. 27 years.
Wow, what year was this?
Late 80s.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy.
It was,
You know, I know guys like Tilford would just get pissed off at the guys who, I mean, he wouldn't even see him in a race, and then, you know, the next year they're beating him by a mile, and he's like, I know they're doping, but I
yeah.
can't do anything about that. And for you just to hang the bike up is powerful.
Yeah, it was just like one of those moments where I signed this pro contract for $13,500 a year, and for a U.S. kid to get recognized and actually signed was kind of a big deal at the time. There was a few of us, that were making it, and I think I just fit the skill set. I was just, I was a big guy that could put out watts. I was never going to go over a climb in front of anybody, but it fit a European kind of team skill set that they needed to fill. I was pretty excited about it all, and then it just all ended in one hot afternoon after a bike race where the trainer called me in and just basically pulled the wool off of my eyes and let me know what was going on, and for me to realize that all of my teammates were doping to the gills, and the only way for me to go forward was to begin. And I just, something inside of me just said, this isn't right, but this isn't my path. And I just knew that my days of racing bikes was over. So that's what happened.
Wow. That's that's crazy. That's sad, actually. I mean, that makes me sad. You know, I grew up in the '80s watching the Le Mans, Fignons, you know, and the days of ADB, uh, training the national team, and Lexi
Yeah,
Graywall, Connie Carpenter. I
yeah,
mean, that whole generation were my heroes when I was, well, your age, 20, 21,
sure.
22.
I
Um,
came along and like the Davis Finneys and Eric Heidens and Beth Hayden and Tom Schuler and Ron Kiefel and all those guys were all in that next class just above me. But I was just fast enough as a junior tour. I was doing all of the crits as a junior with the pros. And so I got a chance to stare at Eric Heiden's legs and got to see firsthand 7-Eleven dominate a criterium, which was kind of an art form back in the day. But yeah,
hmm,
it was actually the American crit and road scene was quite buzzing back in the day.
yeah, for sure was.
Yeah.
For sure was. Well, I'm glad you found your way back. What brought you back?
uh, I was just in a marriage that was a little sideways, and I just was like, man, I need something healthy to pedal off some angst, and so I bought a used road bike, and I just started just going out mashing the pedals, and it was only therapy it was my only reason why I got on that thing, but I started riding 5 6 days a week, and then I started riding hard, and then I started riding really hard, and then I started adding some volume. And I was in Colorado, and I didn't want to enter a race in my neighborhood because I figured I'd get killed. Didn't want to see all the locals get see me get killed, so I went to Texas for a gravel race just to see if I could hang, and it ended up winning the bike race,
Oh,
and that just kind of like was a domino to just getting more involved in gravel, and just the gravel was more of a fit for my skill set.
yeah, huh, that's
So,
interesting. How long ago was that?
oh boy, 8 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you haven't looked back.
yeah. Actually, uh, yeah, 7 or 8 years ago. I just turned 50.
Hmm,
So,
sweet. Well, welcome back. You've come back, uh, kind of storming onto the scene. Uh, Tell me about the origin story of the Mazda Orange Seal team? Like, where'd that come from? Who
Sure.
says, like, gosh, we should put together a team of gravel riders?
Yeah. I had come from being around either on some really awesome teams or around some pretty amazing teams that were well run, that kind of saw the bigger picture. And so even after I left cycling, I was involved in sports with other teams and stuff. And so there was just always something to me that was powerful about having a group of people come together and then doing it well. And I just had this vision that was just kind of eating away at the back of my head because I knew that my days of like wrecking gravel were coming to an end, and that my days of being really competitive myself were would soon be over. And just here I am, I'm divorced at the time. I'm raising two kids. This is like the worst possible time to think about starting a cycling team. Because it's, I mean, obviously this isn't something to get rich doing, but I just had this vision in my head that was just keep eating at me. And sorry, I got a Labrador Retriever pup that's chewing on a bone. Uh, I watched the movie Field of Dreams one night, and I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, and by the morning I just was like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this.
Build it. Build it. They will
If you
come.
build it, they will come. And that was
Oh, that's
just the
awesome.
expression that just kept coming back into my mind. And obviously, there's a lot of things you could extract from that if you wanted to. But um, there was just something that stuck out at me, and it didn't make logical sense. But within a few days, I had a list of probably 160 cycling companies, probably 60 or 70 bike companies, and then we made it a short list of bikes that there's a lot of bike companies, but how many bikes do you want to race, right?
That's fair.
um, I mean, it's got to be equipment that riders like want to be on. Sportful became an early partner. Rodeo Labs, which was just a young, you know growing custom bike company out of Colorado. So we just started um, accruing some really amazing partners. Mazda, and then Summit Automotive and Groove in Denver there came on board and backed us financially. Horn Seal. Um, so it's kind of morphed. Our first race was almost, what, 5 years ago, was Mid South. And here I'm popping off that we're we're gonna put guys on the podiums at all these big races. I mean, that's a pretty big ask, right?
That's a big ask, and that's a
Yeah,
big race to try and throw somebody on the
yeah.
podium
And
at.
here we are. It's our first race, and I'd signed Jonathan Baker, who's like 43 years old, but just like an amazing guy and incredibly intelligent and just an amazing motor. But he was third place. So
Oh, no way.
we literally in our first race were on the podium, and then I mean, we pretty much wrecked gravel that first couple of years. It was pretty awesome.
Oh, that is awesome. A lot of directions we could go in this conversation. One thing I want to ask about is your relationship with Mazda, and it's not super common to have, at least at this level, a non-endemic, I don't know if that's, I'm saying that word correctly,
Yeah,
um, a non-bike company sponsoring a cycling team. And I'm curious how, I mean, they're still there. You're hanging on to them. You
yeah,
still have that relationship. How do they find the value for their investment? Like, are they seeing a return? Do you guys have discussions about that? What are they happy with? What would they like to see more of? Just curious about that
sure.
relationship and if others can learn from that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, just from my standpoint, the only longevity I see in a cycling team like ours is you either have to just be so amazing, you have to be so Keegan Swenson like performance results. And also, I mean, if you look at Keegan, how well he does on social media, and there's way more than one example. But for us to be successful, I just always thought we had to get um, partners that were not involved in the bike business. Um, and that,
Tell me the philosophy behind that. Why? That's not my first thought. I think,
sure,
gosh, I want to get people
sure.
who are in the bike business.
Well, I mean, it's not like as far as like equipment sponsors and stuff like that. Absolutely, you know, there's some there's some partners that we've had that were there's no question to them or to us that we moved the needle for them. We just sold so many wheels or bikes or something.
Yep.
But in the end, to go to them and just say, hey, we need a um, $500,000 budget this year. We need you to write a big check. There's not very many bike companies that are in the position to do that.
Yeah, that's
And, like if you talk to Mazda or Toyota or somebody like that, they're going to spend more money on a 30-second commercial than they will on two or three sports teams. Or, than a head or something would have to spend on a cycling team
right, right,
for an entire year. So,
right.
um, just for us, it just, for me, it just lends some credibility to what we do for us to be able to go outside of the business. And I think that we need to um, obviously create value for them. And I think that's a little bit, um, those people have such exotic um, ways to calculate all of these different metrics
Hmm.
on how many times their product or image pops up on almost anything they're able to track. I mean, Garmin has this outrageous way to track the return on their investment, and almost all these big corporations do that. So, fortunately for us, you know, it is a sponsorship that is basically what do they call it? That a lot of these, big car dealerships, they um, have co-op advertising dollars
Hmm.
to where they're able to steer that money from corporate. So does some part of our budget come from Mazda corporate? Yes, but that is part of pooled money
Oh, dig it.
out of a marketing pool. They call it a co-op pool.
Yep, makes sense.
So
I get that.
Alex Gillette at um, Summit Automotive in Centennial, Colorado, kind of directs some of those funds our way. So
Nice.
it turns into, in the past it was a couple vehicles and um, cash, which is just an enormous blessing for us because obviously we have to retain riders and pay entry fees and travel and stuff. So that's been, it, it might sound magical to like, to land the Toyotas and the Samsungs or whoever else might be out there, but the, my story is probably less exotic. I'd love it if it just sounded all amazing and I talked to the president of Mazda and he liked me so much he just sponsored me, but that's not the story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it may not be sexy and gorgeous story, but it's a creative way to put together the money to run the team
Yeah,
and pull in dollars into the world of cycling that otherwise wouldn't be. And if you think about it, like we all need vehicles to get from point A to point B,
mm-hmm,
whether that's to show up at the trailhead or drive to Texas to go to a gravel race or
sure,
whatever. Um, even go on vacation. We go down to Bentonville and ride our mountain bikes, and
sure,
that's fun, but we got to get there.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
It's a definitely a complementary industry, but not direct. So, yeah, I say kudos to you for bringing in some outside money. I love it. You do also have some uh, cycling industry money, or I don't know if you have money or just a bunch of bottles of Orange Seal, but you signed up with Orange Seal this year. And
Yeah.
my question to you is, one, how many bikes are in your garage?
Ooh. I just bought my wife a new Specialized Epic
Ooh,
for her
nice.
birthday. So that's a mountain bike. I have a road bike and a gravel bike, and those are the only two bikes that I own personally.
Oh,
The
wow.
rest
All
of it,
right.
I have an extra team bike, three, four. There's six total bikes, but four of them are only four of them belong to me. I was
Well,
always like,
the,
I was always like, keep one road bike. When my old when it was time for a new road bike, I sold the old one. You know,
hmm Yeah,
Same thing with
I
gravel
can.
bikes. Now I'm building up a new S-Works Crux that's just going to be the most outrageous bike. But my old Lauf, I don't want to see that thing anymore.
Fair enough. What size are you? Maybe we should talk offline.
It's a
Um,
58.
oh, you're too big for me. Um, well, the reason I ask is, I mean, you and I are about the same age, grew up with tubes, and gosh, I mean, I've got my wife and I each have a mountain bike, we each have a gravel bike, we each have a cross bike, we've got a tandem, I've got two road bikes, she's got her two road bike. I mean, we just have a ton of bikes, and I just cannot get my brain wrapped around managing sealant. Can you
Yeah.
relate to that? Talk me into sealant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've all gone through experimenting with all kinds of sealant. And I did that, and I would settle on orange seal, and then somebody comes out and says, "Oh, there's something that's bigger and better and fancier," and I try that, and I would just hate it, and like my valves would get fouled, and it dries up fast, and so I always would come back to orange seal,
Hmm,
and then we got fortunate enough I got to meet John Vargas a little bit ago, and he got involved with the team, but the conversation not about that. I'm like on my road bike right now. I've never crossed over until recently with going to the tubeless, and I don't know. I don't know. I went with these, those really like they're about as thick as a condom, and they're pink and yellow and all the what are those tubes?
latex, latex tubes.
No, they're not latex. It's like a
Oh,
plasticky sort of material. But anyway, I've been experimenting with those, and I just had my like fourth flat yesterday.
oh,
So now I'm like, maybe I'm just going back to so I got one wheel that's got sealant and one wheel that's got the tubes, and I've had four flats. They're the same tire. So I'm running sealant in one and the tubes in the other, and I think I'm going back to the sealant, and every bike that I ride a lot, I'm gonna run sealant in. And if I build up a townie like I want to, or just a knockabout mountain bike, I'm just gonna leave tubes in it just because I don't ride them that much.
fair enough.
I don't know. I'm all ears if you got some better advice for me.
No, I just like everybody leans into me about Dave. You got to get on the tubeless bandwagon. And I'm like, I don't want to manage all those tires that are hanging in my garage
You
every
know
year.
what's what's interesting in my situation is it's a little bit unrealistic because like how many guys just get sent all these sets of exotic wheels and tires all the time, right? And boxes of sealant. So I live in a little bit of a unrealistic world. One day I'll wake up in the real world and realize, wow, all that sealant costs a lot of money, and those tires are $100 a piece. You know, you
That's my
know.
world.
So
That is my
I'm
world for
I don't
sure.
live in the real world just yet, but I'm just smart enough to know that I don't live in the real world. But um, as far as gravel goes, I can't imagine running anything else but just tubeless.
I just got to give it a try, don't I?
Well, it's faster. The rolling resistance is faster. Uh, so a little bit lighter setup. And the orange seal in the, climates that are a little bit more humid, I've discovered here just lasts longer.
Hmm.
That dry Texas wind just seemed to turn the latex into a dry substance so fast. But
Oh,
here I'm having a lot better luck. And so yeah, it's it's not a perfect science. We still got to plug a tire every once in a while, but I think once you cross over, I can't imagine going back. At least for gravel. The gravel and the mountain
well,
bikers, I can't imagine. Are you on a gravel
we'll
bike a lot?
yeah, oh yeah, yep, gravel, road, mountain. I mean, we ride all our bikes all the time.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll leave you alone. If you want to ride tubes, that's all good. I understand.
I'll just watch you ride away from me,
I
and
understand.
then I'll be on the side of the road putting a new tube in, fixing a flat when I hit a piece of glass or pick up a little piece of wire from somebody's shredded tire or something. But
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I ought to just give it a try. Um,
It's like the people that complain about how hard it is to wax their chain.
oh man,
Once you cross over, you never go back.
I I love a waxed chain. I mean,
There you
that's
go.
from the '80s. Like I used to, just go buy a block of paraffin and melt it on the stove, which you probably shouldn't do, but drop my chain in there
Yeah.
about once a week, once every week and a half, and so smooth, so clean.
Yeah.
Loved it.
There you
Loved it.
go.
Yep.
It's in the same bucket for me as tubeless tires.
Yeah,
Uh,
I haven't ever seen pictures of somebody's chain spewing sealant all over their living room when they were changing their chains out. But, you
What?
know,
Oh, fair. That's fair.
all right, let's move on to some of the riders. You've got some returning, and
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Marissa Boaz. She's a good friend of ours in Iowa here. Also a fan of somebody new to the team this year, Jenna Reinhardt. We've been doing Schwamigan since 1999, and I don't know, 5, 6 times she's been standing on the podium there. She's probably been on the podium more than 5 or 6 times, but I bet you she won that thing 4 or 5 times.
You could probably take 5 minutes and teach me about Jenna Reinhardt because you maybe know more than I do. I knew,
I know she's a upper Midwest kind of legend. I mean, she's
yeah,
just been around a long time and um, has beat people up on mountain bikes for many years. And I know she kind of backed off for a bit, but is back. And I mean, holy moly, sixth in the Lifetime Grand Prix last year.
yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
That's a that's a very competitive 35 riders.
That's that is well said, and no doubt. And I was kidding a little bit about the fact that you know more than I do, but I mean, I keep my eyes out, just kind of watching what's going on in the men's and women's gravel scene, and not just gravel, but what's going on in the mountain bike races, and um, more lately, a little bit less so with watching road racing, just because gravel is trending towards more technical than less technical. But Jenna Reinhardt, I watched her race Big Sugar this last October And then I hung around and watched how she treated people and just how she just handled herself. And I was like, wow. She had two mechanicals during that race, both about 90 seconds each. And she still bridged back to that group that she was in, which was just mind numbing to do a solo bridge twice back to like five of the top women in gravel. And I was like, wow. Um, Long story short, I just was like, what do we got to do? We were on Lauf. Lauf was not a fit for her because she owned a bike shop there, and going with a company that was exclusively direct to consumer was just
Oh,
not a
that's
fit.
a right. That's not a fit.
So enter Specialized. Of course, in the perfect world, you just sign Specialized for the whole team, but obviously knocking on the top floor at Specialized and having them say yes to a stranger, that's would take an act of God. So anyway, we just kind of like started problem solving, and she and I were just having some conversations, and the next thing we knew, we had it all worked out. And what, 3 weeks later, I signed a deal with Specialized to get Specialized bikes for the rest of the team, which was a miracle, literally a
Oh, that's
miracle.
awesome.
Yeah,
So that's public now.
yeah. We just they're building the bikes this week.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome.
there's a
What
couple of riders got complete bikes, and then a couple of riders got frames.
what are the bikes? What are the Are they all the same? You got like Cruxes? What are you riding?
S Works Crux, and then the drivetrains are going to be that new SRAM EXO transmission.
Oh, wow.
What the just the We're going to go with the standard. Um, my bike's got that fancy Aero carbon one by front chainring with the cork power meter.
You'll
So
probably be winning races again since it's all fancy aero.
yeah, so yeah, we Vision and FSA is sending. Well, they've already sent the fancy aero cockpits and stuff like that. But they've sent headsets and bottom brackets. Well, actually, we don't have bottom brackets yet, but um, yeah, FSA and Vision helped with some accessories. Head just finished the team wheels this week. Those went out to the riders.
So you're back on heads.
We're gonna stay with Head. We're gonna
Nice.
stay with
We're fans of head. Have been for a long time.
Yeah. They just were bulletproof for us, and Anne has been great to work with. Just a
Can I tell
Just
you
a
a
good
funny story
partnership.
about Anne?
Yeah,
Um, she and Steve would come do Ragbri,
yeah.
and I'm a longtime Ragbrier, and it seems like every year I would run into Steve and ride with him for a bit. And at one point was riding with both he and Ann, and I'm like, "Ooh, nice wheels" to Ann, and she's like, "Oh, that's funny. I appreciate that." 20 minutes ago, some guy rides up and he's like, "What are you riding those for? Why are you riding those? Those are weird." Blah blah blah. I don't know what he was saying, but he was making fun of her riding those wheels, and she's like, "Oh, well, why don't you tell that guy behind me, my husband? His name is Steve Head." And the guy just
Oh,
like put his tail between his legs and rode away. That was that was best
uh,
comeback ever. So yep, love those two, and Ann is a gem for sure, and
uh,
done great at keeping that company rolling. So I'm glad to hear you're back on heads. Um, Back through your list of humans riding with you. Tell me about Eno.
you know, last year I lost three of my fastest riders with health issues of some sort. Um, a back issue, Marissa broke her pelvis. Eno was having some serious issues towards the middle of the season, and so I literally lost all 3 riders in the middle of the year. It was devastating. But Eno's got checked out. He's back being himself. He's back on a hard training schedule. He's back. He's being coached by Nick Gould, which is also on the team, who's also an amazing coach. And I just think that that pair is just a good combination. So Eno is just one of the grittiest. Like, he's a guy that could get dropped 10 times. I think he must have got. We were out watching the race at Mid-South last year out on the course, sneaking peeks at all of the front group when they were coming through, and Eno must have got dropped 10 times. But you can't kill him. You just can't kill the kid. And he came back, ended up 4th at Mid-South. And that was a pretty salty field right there. But he's done that a lot. I mean, that's just kind of classic Eno.
Mm-hmm.
It's
grits and not giving up.
Yeah, Eno's not going to be the guy that says, just, felt easy today. I had these amazing legs. I rode away from the world. But Eno is a hard worker. He's so prepared. He knows what's going on. Probably the one guy that should literally give a clinic on cornering on gravel. I've never seen anybody corner better. It's the damnedest thing. We'll put him on these Renee Hurst file tread, basically slick tires, and he'll out corner guys. I mean,
what's his background?
He's a roadie.
I was going to ask if he was like a crit guy. I mean, one of the things you learn racing crits is how to corner.
Yeah, he gaps guys on corners all the time, and every time I ride with him, I try to watch. And, a lot of times it's nuanced so much that you want to actually hear somebody articulate something. Where exactly is your balance? Exactly how much weight you have on your palms? So many little things. But he has he has a gift for, not so much the super techie mountain bikey sort of stuff, which actually he's gotten way better at, but he has the ability to ride, what they're throwing at single track and stuff at these guys. He's able to ride that at speed, and then just the classic, American 90-degree turn on gravel, which there's 100 of them in these races.
Right.
He's just good at it. He knows where to. He's my marginal gains guys. He's the guy that you might find with arrow socks and, like doing weird stuff. But he's thought about all that. There's nothing by accident with Eno. He's very prepared. He's very, very committed to this whole process, and he's just one of those fun guys to have. He's the guy that bakes a loaf of bread for the family that was hosting us before we leave. He bakes the bread at Airbnbs and leaves a loaf of bread on the table. He's that guy.
Huh. Next time you're in Des Moines, he can stay at our place.
Yeah, it's that good.
Yeah,
it's that good.
I can smell it just dreaming about it for sure.
Yeah.
So how about Danielle? What an interesting story there. She hasn't been riding forever and came from.
No, she's
freaking NFL cheerleader.
She was an NFL cheerleader for the Minnesota Vikings for 3 seasons.
That's awesome.
And was successful at it, had the ability to go back, but she was just like, there's got to be something else. She was looking for the next challenge. And, she'd been a professional dancer for years. But she found cycling. I didn't find her at the time, but she found cycling and evidently just went from zero to hero pretty fast. Faster than a normal person is supposed to be able to.
Yeah, I wouldn't think from dancing.
No,
it would transition like that, but
no, it's not a logical progression necessarily, but neither was Marissa's. But if you press into some of her physiology, Danielle's resting heart rate is 32.
Oh my.
And if you just like spread that physiology and those results across the stuff that the metrics that you get when you test somebody, you realize this is somebody that's very unique. This is not just like a normal human being. And she's already putting out, power numbers that would rival, the girls on the world tour.
So she would have got an invite from Eddie B.
She would have probably taken my spot, no doubt.
That's fair.
But yeah,
She'll be fun to watch.
she's
I'm excited
she's
to see her
she
in the
raced in
gravel.
she raced in Europe last year on the road. She raced some in the US. But like I said, this is a little bit of um, a wild card for me. And she is green. She's surrounded by some really, really sharp teammates that I think are going to be able to grow her up. So between all of us and her work ethic, I think we're going to see some fun bike races for her, especially at some of the more classic races, right, where we're not dealing with like say Cave Creek, Arizona, where there's 60 miles of single track, right?
Right, right. Like I don't know, a gravel worlds or a
Yeah,
um,
there's
I don't know,
yeah,
even an Unbound, but Unbound gets pretty rough here and there.
sure. Like
Mid South
the
if
mid
it's
south
not
and
raining.
unbounds, like on any sort of normal day, we're gonna get to see how she does. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
for
I'd
sure.
cheer her on, and we'll just see what happens. But I know that she's got a lot of upside. She's already
Yeah,
seeing the upside. She's working so hard right now.
that's cool. And you know what's cool to me is seeing that Marissa is now in a position of kind of leadership in that team as um, kind of the old kid. um, she's been around, but to me, she's still new. I remember my wife was her mentor,
Wow.
and they're still good friends. And so to see Marissa transition to being mentor for someone else, it's like, oh, she's like full circle, just gotten so good so fast.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. Marissa came from volleyball.
Yep. She played
You know,
volleyball, did a little running.
so her crossover, I think she's a little bit similar to Danielle in the sense that she just was born with a special DNA strand that obviously only matters when you match the work with it. But she's obviously done that.
Yep, done that and is doing that.
Yeah.
It's great to have her back on her bike after her broken pelvis last summer, um, and see what she can do. I know she's motivated. We ride with Austin, her husband, now and again, and he's like, "Whoo, I'd hate to line up with Marissa this spring."
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. Um, you just made a comment like she's still new. And I think that in so many ways that's correct because in some ways the gravel world hasn't really had a chance to completely meet her yet.
It's probably a
You,
fair
you
statement.
know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
I was at Gravel Locos last year and Fabian, the race director, he's just a really fun, eclectic sort of guy. I mean, he'll be playing AC/DC on the drums at the end of at the award show, and he's out there on some crazy vehicle during the race doing something. But he's fun. He let me follow that race last year in the team car,
Hmm.
which I didn't. We didn't break any rules, obviously. Some people get all nervy about that, but some race directors could care less, and some race directors, don't want to see a team car anywhere out there. But he doesn't care. So I just went and watched that race, and the woman that won Unbound was in that group with her, along with a couple of really of the top female riders out there. And Marissa just outrode those girls. Like she's just flat stronger all day. almost to the point where if I'd had a bullhorn, I'd have been yelling to say, Marissa, get off the front. You know, because she had the ability to drive that group. There was a group of about 4 or 5 women and 7 men, and she had the ability. She would attack the group some, and all of a sudden, you know, the ladies would um, all of a sudden do some work, but the rest of the day, the other ladies just weren't able to do much of the work. But Marissa was driving that group all day long, and she came around that last corner, and there was a flag that was blowing into the into the corner, uh, onto
Hmm.
the course, and she ran into that flag on that inside corner. And the finish is 100 feet after the flag. She runs into the flag, somehow doesn't crash, but just really disoriented and lost by a foot and a half to the woman that won Unbound.
Mm.
So here, this is 2 weeks before Unbound. This is all teed up. I just couldn't be more excited. I just had to shut my mouth and just kind of watch the bike racing. And then the mud happened at Unbound.
Hmm.
Marissa came out of the. She must have been the last woman out of the mud because I was with a photographer at the first photo checkpoint at mile marker 25, and she didn't come through that checkpoint. It felt like she came through there a week later. I was like, oh wow, ouch. Well, by almost 100 miles, she'd ridden back up to like 5 minutes behind the lead. Like she went from
Amazing.
like last to fourth or fifth, and she was riding through that race and was taken out by just a brutal crash that she wasn't able to continue and then broke her pelvis. And so when I say the world hasn't had a chance to meet her, that's kind of what I'm saying is like had she had a finished off that ride at Unbound last year and been on the podium or won that race, it would have changed everything.
Yeah, for sure.
They would have met Marissa, in other words, basically, and the media would have been more curious about what's going on. But as it was, you know, it was just kind of it all got quiet. Marissa's got a broken pelvis. Here she's home recovering in Iowa with 4 kids. Her story's not being told. And
Yeah.
I
Yep.
hope that this year she's able to tell it
Yep. We all do. We're all
because
fans of hers.
she really is um she's got the ability to win an Unbound in a lot of those top tier races, and you can only say that about a handful of girls out there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right about that. We'll be watching with interest. She's not coming down to Rattlesnake Gravel Grind. You're coming down to that again, aren't you?
I'm gonna try to make it uh, and bring Danielle.
Oh, fun.
Danielle's gonna stay with us for a while. I'm gonna try to bring Danielle. I don't think Jenna's going. It would
Mm.
be Danielle and Eno.
And Eno's coming.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Hmm.
What are your other goals for this year? Do you guys have dates circled on the calendar that are especially important?
I would say we don't have so much a collective bunch of goals, but the riders all have their individual goals, and I kind of just let them create their own schedule. I don't. There's some events that I want them to be at. There's some events that I steer them to go to, but their goals are their own.
Hmm, that's cool. So there's some freedom on your team.
Yes, a lot of freedom. I just
Hmm.
I can't sign somebody. You know, Marissa's got 4 children. She's married. She's got a life. I can't tell Marissa what she does every weekend with her life. It just doesn't work. Which in some
Yeah.
ways is why they love it. It's because they're able to be involved with something that's really cool and that supports them, but um, they still have some of that flexibility that these privateers have.
Yeah, which is cool. That's very cool. I know that the big draw for the privateer thing is you get to choose your weekends,
Sure.
choose the route you go crisscrossing the country.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will look forward to seeing you somewhere. maybe
Yeah.
in Texas in March. Um, I don't know. We'll see. My calendar's not filled out yet either. We like to
Will
go.
you be at Mid South or Valley of Tears or any of that?
Um, Probably not. We are. Let's see. Mid South's right after. We've got a. My wife has a work trip that we're going on right after Rattlesnake. My kid's graduating in May, which takes us out of
Oh,
Gravel Locos, which actually pretty okay with because it's our last kid. It's college. Celebration will ensue.
good for you. Good for
Very
you.
excited about that.
That's
Very
awesome.
excited about that.
Well, I appreciate you having me on for a few minutes, and I'm just the guy in the background, but I love it, and I love watching these guys race a bike, and I just love the fact that kind of gravel gave this whole world of cycling just this giant injection that I'd never had any idea. I would have never foreseen that. If you'd asked me 15 years ago, what's the next big thing, I would not have been the one to figure it out.
No, me neither.
But
I have
it's
ridden
awesome.
gravel for a long time, but
Yeah,
never foresaw this.
no, me either.
Never foresaw this.
So,
It's definitely a new paradigm here in the States, back from the old 7-Eleven days and um, the Coors Light Squad, Lowenbrow. Yeah, I don't know, like the road scene here in the U.S. was hot. And it's transitioned big time to gravel, which opens up for a whole new paradigm of how to put together a team and go hit some of the big races around the U.S. And
yeah,
I'm glad that you said yes to the whispering corn in the Iowa countryside, and you built it. And I know your riders. I know I can only speak for Marissa, and I guess I talked to Chase this winter. Both of them were thrilled to be a positive part of the part of your crew, and I know Marissa still is, and um,
Chase,
appreciates the work you've put in and
thank
continue to
you.
put in to make that team a reality.
Chase,
So rock on, man.
Chase is a great kid. I hope that our paths cross again one day soon. But what a great kid, and he just won Rock Cobbler, which is just awesome.
Yep, he did. We might go up to one of his races.
No, I'm pulling for him to have a great year, even though he won't be in my kit.
Yep.
What a great kid. So,
Yep, for sure. He's a
thanks
good
for
dude.
having me on.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
John, thanks so much for joining me today and sharing your history with the bike and the team. I'm looking forward to seeing you and some of the other riders at races like Serum, the Rattlesnake Gravel Grind, and possibly Unbound. Best of luck and skills to you and your riders this season. Maybe we'll see some of you at the Core 4 in Iowa City this August. Who's ready for some Core 4 news? After a huge spike in riders and a super thank you to everyone for coming out this year, these guys jumped right back into the fire. It's no surface untouched again for 2024 because Core 424 has a sweet sound to it, no doubt. New routes, new distances, and a new you. That's right, y'all, they are mixing it up with more surprises and delights. New for 24 is the Core 40 distance. Just a bump up from the 20 mile and still has all the farmscapes and B roads and champagne gravel you'd expect from the folks at Core 4, just without the single track. They're telling us 60 is the new 50, miles that is. It's a no-surfaced, untouched, podium-eligible route with all the cats in addition to their marquee 100-mile event. It's the perfect blend of competition and community. We want Core 4 to be on your event calendar for 2024. Jump on Bike Reg today Snag your spot before this event reaches its cap. Come ride the wave and get more bodies on bikes. It's blazing hot action every year, and they'll keep the fire stoked all winter long with the 20, 40, 60, or 100 mile route. Core 424 has something for everyone. It's time for the next time. Let's go! And this weekend, Dee and I are pedaling our tandem in the OG of winter gravel rides, the 65-mile Serum. And while I'm excited to spend the day rolling through the south central Iowa gravel with Dee, we love riding our tandem. I'm also excited to announce that I've been selected as an Orange Mud ambassador. And this weekend will be the perfect time to strap on the gear vest with a 1-liter hydration bladder. I'll let you know what I think. I'm also going to be bringing my transition wrap that not only keeps me covered while I change out of my bibs, but it also fits over the seat of my car to keep all that gravel grit out of my seats. You should check out all that Orange Mud gear has to offer at orangemud.com. It's an Austin, Texas-based company. I really appreciate you tuning in each week, and I'd really love it if you would rate and review this show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you want to support the show financially, just look for Bike Talk with Dave at buymeacoffee.com and drop a few coins in the cup. If you do, I'd love to send you a sticker. And be sure to check out the Bike Talk with Dave channel on YouTube, where you can watch some of our award-winning films, including 1,000 Miles to Nome and Down the Kuskokwim, both of which are about the Iditarod Trail Invitational, a bike, run, and ski race along the infamous Iditarod Trail. That race actually just starts in a few days from today when this podcast drops. And I wish everyone lining up at Kinnick safe travels this year. If you're interested at all in this remote Alaska race, be sure to watch both of those films. And look for interviews on this podcast with the likes of Peter Inman, John Logar, Leah Grun, Steve McGuire, Steve Cannon, Tyson Flaherty, and more. Between the films and the podcast, you'll learn and get a great idea of what life is like on the Iditarod Trail. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy your rides as spring teases us with some warm days. And remember that nothing compares with the simple pleasure of riding a bicycle.